Welcome to the Deep Dive. You know we love to dig deep into a topic you're curious about. And today we're taking on human origins.
Human origin.
Yeah, it looks like you sent in a ton of research on this one, so we're going to get into not just where humans came from,
Right.
but how they spread all over the globe and what those ancient journeys can tell us about our species.
It's a question that's fascinated people for centuries.
Oh, yeah?
Where did we come from? And for a while, the debate was all about these two big theories. The out of Africa theory,
Oh.
suggesting a single origin in Africa,
Uh-huh.
and the multi-regional theory, saying there were multiple origins around the world.
I remember learning about that in school.
Yeah.
One of those big scientific mysteries.
It was. But even before we had all the fancy tools to analyze DNA, Charles Darwin had a hunch
Oh, wow.
back in 1871.
Way back then.
He thought Africa was probably the cradle of humankind.
Really?
He based this on where primates lived and his understanding of evolution.
Hmm.
But it was a bold prediction at the time.
So Darwin basically called it,
Yeah.
even without the hard evidence. Wow. But what about fossil discoveries? Didn't those back up the out of Africa theory?
Totally. Fossils like the Taung Child, found in South Africa in 1924,
Okay.
and Lucy, found in Ethiopia in 1974,
Oh, yeah, Lucy.
gave us really strong evidence that early hominids were hanging out in Africa millions of years ago.
I remember seeing pictures of Lucy's skeleton in textbooks.
Yeah.
It felt like I was looking back in time at an ancient ancestor.
Powerful, isn't it?
It is.
But then we found fossils in other places, like the Yonmu man in China
Mm.
and Java man in Indonesia.
Okay.
These complicated the picture.
How so?
They suggested that the story of human origins might be even older and more complex than we thought.
So it's not as simple as saying Africa is the starting point.
Not quite. Fossils give us clues, but
No.
not the whole story. That's where genetics comes in.
Okay, genes.
Yeah.
I know DNA analysis changed everything,
It did.
but sometimes I get lost in the technical stuff.
Can you break it down?
Sure. We can analyze the Y-chromosome,
Okay.
passed down from fathers,
Mm-hmm.
and mitochondrial DNA,
Right.
inherited from mothers.
Okay.
This lets scientists trace lineages back thousands of years.
So like a giant family tree for everyone?
Exactly. It's like those ancestry DNA kits,
I've seen those.
but on a much bigger scale.
Wow.
And this analysis lets scientists identify Y-chromosomal Adam and mitochondrial Eve.
Adam and Eve. Sounds familiar.
I know, right?
Are we talking about the biblical Adam and Eve?
Not exactly. These are scientific names.
Okay.
They just mean the individuals from whom all modern humans inherited their Y chromosome or mitochondrial DNA.
So it doesn't mean they were the only people alive back then.
Not at all.
Got it. So it's like tracing your family tree back to one ancestor on your mom's side or
Right.
your dad's side. You had other ancestors, but that specific branch goes back to that individual.
You got it. And what's cool is that these genetic analyses point to Africa as the origin of these common ancestors. So more evidence for out of Africa.
Exactly.
So our ancestors migrated out of Africa.
They did.
And spread all over the world.
They did.
But how? I mean, no planes or ships back then.
Right. We have to consider the Ice Age.
Oh, the Ice Age.
Yeah. Sea levels dropped, land bridges appeared,
Wow.
and migration patterns changed big time.
I never thought about the Ice Age like that.
Yeah, it was a huge factor.
So nature was kind of paving the way for our ancestors.
You could say that.
So where did they go first?
Genetic evidence suggests that around 60,000 years ago,
Okay.
early groups carrying these genetic markers,
Okay.
we call them haplogroups.
Haplogroups. What are those?
Think of them like ancient family crests.
Okay.
They're markers that trace human migrations and ancestry.
I see.
Each one labeled alphabetically from A to S.
B to S.
Tells a story about a specific branch of the human family tree.
Wow. So by looking at these haplogroups,
Yeah,
scientists can map the routes our ancestors took.
that's right.
Incredible. So which haplogroups left Africa first? The adventurous ones.
It seems like haplogroups C and D were among the first.
The ND.
They followed the coastlines,
Oh,
eventually reaching Australia and spreading across Asia.
imagine their courage.
I know.
Facing the unknown and adapting to new environments.
Amazing journeys.
They were. But what about Europe?
Europe had a mix.
Okay.
While some C and D lineages went west, it was mainly haplogroups like I, J, and R that took hold in Europe.
Interesting.
These groups probably arrived later, maybe
Wow.
bringing new tools and agriculture with them.
So Europe has a more diverse mix than, say, Australia,
It does. Each continent has its own genetic signature.
showing the different waves of migration.
Exactly. And within those patterns, there are so many individual stories.
I bet.
For example, there's haplogroup O.
Okay.
It's relatively young, only about 10,000 years old.
Okay.
But it's dominant in East and Southeast Asia.
Hmm.
This suggests a rapid expansion in those regions.
And maybe it pushed out some earlier haplogroups.
Possibly. It's a fascinating puzzle.
It is. It makes you wonder about all the factors that shaped our genetic makeup today.
Absolutely. But before we get too deep into that,
Right.
we need to talk about those encounters with other hominids.
I mean, we weren't alone.
Not quite.
I remember learning about Neanderthals,
Yes.
but they always seemed separate, like another species.
That was the common view for a while.
Right.
But then we were able to analyze ancient DNA.
That was a game changer.
It was. And what we found was surprising.
What was that?
Homo sapiens didn't just encounter these other hominids.
Okay.
They interbred with them.
Wait, you mean we have Neanderthal and Denisovan ancestors?
You probably carry a bit of their DNA yourself.
Wow.
It shows those ancient encounters happen.
Not me, is it?
And it makes the story of human origins even more complex.
So we're a mix of different hominid groups.
We are. The more we learn, the more we realize the boundaries between us and them aren't so clear.
It's like we're all part of this giant family with branches that go back so far.
Exactly. We're all connected.
This is blowing my mind. Darwin's predictions, fossils, genetics, those epic migrations out of Africa, and now finding out we carry the genes of other hominid species.
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
But we've only scratched the surface.
I can't wait to learn
We have
more.
so much more to explore.
Let's take a break, and when we come back,
Okay.
we'll dive deeper into those fascinating haplogroups
Yes.
and see how they map human migrations across the globe.
It's going to be fascinating.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back. We're ready to dig deeper into those haplogroups.
I'm ready.
They're like keys to understanding those migrations.
Right.
As we were saying, they're categorized alphabetically by age and location.
Okay.
The oldest ones, A and B,
Uh-huh.
those are found exclusively in Africa.
So that supports the out of Africa idea.
Exactly. It really strengthens it.
So if A and B stayed in Africa,
Yeah.
who were the adventurers?
Mhm.
Which ones headed out first?
It looks like C and D were among the pioneers.
C and D?
They left Africa around 60,000 years ago.
Wow.
Imagine them,
Yeah.
seeking out new horizons.
Uh-huh.
They followed the coastlines,
Okay.
reaching Australia and spreading throughout Asia.
It's a long way.
It's a story of amazing resilience.
It is. What about Europe? Which ones went there?
Europe had a mix.
Okay.
Some C and D lineages went west,
Uh-huh.
but it was mostly haplogroups I, J, and R
Yeah.
that became common in Europe.
I see.
Those groups probably came later,
Oh?
and maybe they brought innovations with them,
Like what?
new tools in agriculture.
So Europe has a more mixed bag of haplogroups than Australia.
It does. It's like each continent has its own genetic signature.
Yeah, showing those different migrations.
Exactly. And within those big movements, there are tons of individual stories.
I can imagine. But what about haplogroup O?
Yeah,
You said it's pretty young,
relatively young, yes.
but it's dominant in East and Southeast Asia.
That's right.
How did that happen?
That's a great question. One theory is that maybe they had some kind of advantage,
Okay.
perhaps in agriculture or immunity, something that allowed them to expand and displace earlier haplogroups.
Wow, so it's like they outcompeted the others.
You could say that.
Like a genetic Game of Thrones.
Exactly. It shows how complex those interactions were.
It does. Speaking of interactions,
Yeah.
we can't forget those encounters with other hominids.
You're right. Neanderthals and Denisovans.
Right.
We all carry a bit of their DNA.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about.
It really shows that our past is intertwined.
It does. We're not just one lineage.
Nope.
We're a mix.
We are, and it's not just genetics that tells us this.
Oh, what else?
Archaeology.
Here we go.
It shows cultural exchange and maybe even interbreeding.
Hmm.
For example, there are cave paintings in Indonesia
Okay.
that seem to show hybrid hominids.
Wow. So it's like piecing together a giant puzzle.
It is. Genetics, archaeology, anthropology.
Right. All contributing to the bigger picture.
Each discovery adds another piece.
Speaking of the puzzle,
Yeah.
what about the Americas?
Ah, yes, the first Americans.
Right. How did they get there?
The evidence points to them crossing the Bering Land Bridge.
The Bering Land Bridge.
During the last ice age,
Okay.
when sea levels were lower,
Right.
it would have been a land connection between Asia and North America.
And they just walked across.
Well, migrated is probably a better word.
Right, migrated.
But yeah, it was an incredible journey.
It was, following in the footsteps of those earlier migrations out of Africa.
Exactly. Those were monumental achievements.
They were. So these first Americans traveled south.
Yeah,
And they encountered all sorts of environments.
they did. Icy tundras, deserts.
Wow, that led to even more genetic diversity.
Exactly. And distinct Native American populations emerged.
Its story with so many threads.
It is.
Yeah.
Each one representing a migration, an adaptation, an encounter.
We've been talking big picture.
Yeah.
Those grand narratives.
Huh?
But what about the individual stories?
Interesting question.
Can we learn about the lives of specific ancestors from their DNA?
That takes us into ancient DNA analysis.
Ancient DNA analysis.
Yeah. Scientists are extracting DNA from old remains.
Okay.
And they're learning incredible things.
Like what?
Diets, diseases, even appearances.
Wow. So we can see what they look like.
In a way, yes. It's like a window into the past.
That's amazing. So not just where they came from,
Right.
but how they lived.
Exactly. And what they ate, what
Ah.
challenges they faced.
It's like we're unraveling their personal stories.
We are. And the discoveries are changing our understanding of the past.
Give me an example.
Okay. So they analyzed DNA from Neanderthal remains.
Yeah.
And it turns out they were much more sophisticated than we thought.
Really?
Yeah. They used tools, controlled fire, even created art.
Wow.
They even cared for their sick and injured.
It seems like we keep underestimating them.
It does seem that way. The more we learn,
Yeah.
the more those lines between us and them blur.
We're all connected.
We are. And these ancient DNA studies are giving us some incredible details.
Okay, I'm all ears. What kind of stories are they telling?
Mm.
Okay, I'm ready for those stories. It's incredible that we can learn so much from just a bit of DNA.
It is amazing. Like, scientists found a 4,000-year-old skull in Greenland.
Okay.
They analyzed the DNA and found out this guy had dark skin, brown eyes, thick, dark hair.
Wow. They could tell all that.
They even found out he was prone to baldness
No way.
and had a gene that made him prone to earwax buildup.
Wow, that's getting pretty personal with history.
It is. It's like bringing the past to life.
It really is.
And it's not just physical stuff.
Oh.
Ancient DNA can tell us about diet, health, and even migrations.
Wow, so much information.
There was this mass grave in Germany
Okay.
with skeletons from about 7,000 years
That
ago.
was a long time ago.
The DNA showed they were victims of a massacre.
Oh, wow.
It helped researchers piece together what happens.
So sad.
It's a reminder that our DNA holds stories of both triumphs and tragedies.
Yeah, like a library of human history inside us.
Exactly. And as technology gets better,
Mhm.
we can analyze even older, more damaged samples.
Wow. Who knows what we'll find?
The possibilities are endless. We've been focusing on the past.
Yeah, the big picture.
But what does all this mean for us now?
Yeah, that's a good question. How does it affect how we see ourselves today?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we're all connected.
We've said that a few times.
And it's true. We're not isolated individuals.
Right.
We're part of this huge tapestry of humanity,
All woven together.
woven together by shared ancestry and a long history of migration, adaptation, and interaction.
It's kind of humbling, isn't it?
It is. No matter our differences, we're
Yeah.
all part of the same human family.
Our DNA proves it,
It does. And I think that's a powerful message,
especially now.
especially now when the world feels so divided.
Right. We need that reminder.
Understanding our shared origins can help us appreciate our common humanity.
Yeah, and be more understanding of each other.
Exactly. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. But there's always more to explore.
There is. So as we wrap up,
Yeah.
what one thought would you leave our listeners with?
Good question.
As they keep digging into human origins,
Okay.
I'd say embrace that journey of discovery.
The journey of discovery.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to question things.
Okay.
Challenge those assumptions
Right.
and keep learning about human evolution.
Because the more we learn about our past
The more we can understand our present.
and shape our future.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Well said. That's a great note to end on.
I think so too.
We've reached the end of our deep dive into human origins.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has. We hope you've enjoyed it.
And that it's made you even more curious about our amazing species.
Until next time,
Keep exploring
keep questioning.
and keep diving deep.